We're here today to introduce and basically reveal a 12th lawsuit against Brother Raymond Rose and the Christian Brothers regarding sexual abuse of students here at Shanley High School. Today's lawsuit is significant in two ways. One is it reveals that the Christian Brothers were absolutely aware that Brother Rose was a child molester prior to assigning him here at Shanley High School. We have evidence that Brother Rose was sent to sex offender treatment in New Mexico prior to being assigned at Shanley High School. And in fact, he was assigned directly to Shanley High School right after the sex offender treatment. That is significant information. It shows how Brother Rose was shuttled not only from school to school, but then when they knew they had a problem back from the 1960s. He finally got treatment in the 1974-75 time frame, and then unfortunately was unleashed in Shanley High School to sexually abuse these kids. And it's a terrible story. The name of the retreat center is called the Sangre de Cristo Retreat Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Sangre de Cristo Retreat Center is a Christian Brothers retreat center and treatment center, and they do treat sexual offenders and sexual abusers at that retreat center. It's a very sad piece of information, because what we now know is that the sexual abuse of these kids here at Fargo could have been avoided. It should have been avoided. Today, we filed a lawsuit on behalf of a young man who was sexually abused on a trip to Fergus Falls, Minnesota. Brother Rose took this kid, stayed overnight in Fergus Falls, sexually abused him in a hotel room there in Fergus Falls. It's a very similar MO to what we've heard in many of the preceding cases. He got the kid drunk, the kid fell asleep, wakes up, Raymond Rose is assaulted. This young man ended up right out of high school joining the Marine Corps. He has now retired from the Marine Corps, and he, in fact, was a sergeant major with the Marine Corps, which is actually one of the highest non-commissioned officer positions you can ever have in the Marine Corps. So he's a good man. He is a leader of men. In fact, he was a drill instructor, it appears, and in fact, he even taught drill instructors. So he in many ways was a man's man, and this has been kind of difficult for him, but he wanted to come forward, and he felt it necessary that he come forward, support the other people who have come forward, confirm what happened to them, and then also tell his story.
I'm honored to be able to identify the Marine. Brian Sadness is a graduate of Shanley High School. Some of the men that Brian trained were some of those that led the American soldiers in Desert Storm. Some of his men are the American soldiers that are currently in Iraq and Afghanistan. That speaks very highly for the quality of this man and what he's done. And for him to stand up and say, "Bob, tell him my name," and hopefully the other Raymond Rose victims will find courage to also step forward if a man of that caliber from Fargo. I'm honored to identify Brian Sadness.
And this is the 12th case against Brother Rose?
Involving Brother Rose,
Okay.
That's correct.
And then the fourth one in Fargo?
The fourth one in Fargo, That's
Okay.
correct.
Why Fargo? But I guess the obvious answer would be Brother Rose's location.
The reason why I filed this lawsuit in Fargo, because he met him. Brother Rose worked at Shanley High School, Fargo area, and the grooming occurred here North Dakota, and then the plans and everything to take him on, you know, and use him at some other place occurred here. And so that's why we have, and also the Diocese of Fargo is here.
Christian brothers also resided here.
The Christian brothers also resided here. Brother Rose was a resident of North Dakota at the time.
Did you say that the treatment center he went to was it's a Christian Brothers sexual treatment center?
Yes, it's a treatment center run and owned and operated by the Christian Brothers, where they treat sexual abusers. I think they also treat some other mental disorders, but sexual abusers is where what is most common. And they did not tell any of, when they brought Brother Rose back, brought him here to Shanley High School, they didn't tell any of the parents that he'd been in treatment for being a sexual abuser. They didn't tell any of the kids that he'd been in treatment for being a sexual abuser. They didn't tell, to the best of our knowledge, even fellow teachers, so that they could kind of keep an eye on him. So, you know, this kind of secrecy doesn't indicate that they believe Brother Rose could be treated. It appears as though this kind of secrecy is to hide what he was. And I guess they just hope for the best. Now, if I'm a parent with a child in school, hope for the best, this doesn't cut it.
Pat, in your document, you talk about where one of the other Rose victims, or a family, went to an official of Shanley in 1976, right? It would have been a year after he was released from there. Should that not have been a red flag to this institution? You got a sex offender that deals with treatment, they let him out, and he's offending again, to stop it?
Yeah, I mean, there's just no question. I mean, they knew as far back as the mid-1960s that Brother Rose was sexually abusing kids. But then when they did send him to treatment, and then there was another report while at Shanley, a parent went, and what it was is a parent of a kid who went on one of these trips with Brother Rose. The kid came back and told his mom, you know, I think Brother Rose is molesting the other kid on the trip. So his mother went to Shanley and said, hey, something's happening here. And yet he still stayed at Shanley. He still taught at Shanley and still had access to kids at Shanley.
How long was he at Shanley?
He taught at Shanley High School from 1976 to 1980.
So straight out of treatment to Shanley.
To Shanley, even though he got a report again, kept him at Shanley, kept having access to kids. My clients, to a person, have asked just for a couple things. One of them is accountability, because they, I think, have the right to understand what happened and how it could have happened. When we now look at it, we look back and think, it's in horror, you know, to see what happened here. And my clients have the right, in fact, to have an understanding, or at least get the information as to how this could have happened. Because we cannot prevent it from happening again until there is accountability. Our clients desperately want to make sure that not one more kid gets sexually abused, you know, at all.
I'd like to talk about some accountability to the existing current bishop of the Diocese of Fargo. They talk about their child protection program. Raymond Rose has never been held accountable for his crimes. And if Raymond Rose is living across the street from a boys' school in Chicago, Illinois, if this bishop wants to be accountable, do whatever he can to take those children out of harm's way. If he wants to say they have a child protection program, then protect the children from a rapist that raped umpteen dozen Catholic kids from his diocese. Be accountable, Bishop Aquila. And he needs to follow the policy that they have, where they say where there is credible allegations, they will stand at the pulpit and reach out. Bishop Aquila doesn't need a survivor coming here reaching out to people that have been abused in his diocese. He needs to stand up in a black garment or his colors and reach out to the Catholics that have had children that have been abused. Give them a pastoral outreach that he cares. He hasn't said who. Aquila has got to get off his throne and be a priest.